The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole. So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country.
Yes, it's all Rachel Zegler and her behavior. And if it was just one comment, it probably would have been forgotten by now.
I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film.
Rachel Zegler went from Hollywood's Golden Girl to box office poison practically overnight. So how did the promising star of Disney's Snow White remake manage to sabotage her career in record time? Just weeks ago, Rachel fled the intense spotlight of Hollywood for New York City, spotted riding public trains, a stunning departure from the lavish life she once enjoyed. Her drastic fall from grace isn't just about one failed movie. It's a jaw-dropping tale of controversial statements, empty theaters, and a global audience turning their backs on Disney's latest gamble. As humiliating viral TikToks emerged from deserted screenings, it became clear Rachel's controversial behavior off-screen played a massive role in the film's shocking collapse. Now, major studios are distancing themselves, co-stars are openly critical, and Rachel herself is reportedly on the brink of emotional collapse. But how exactly did it all spiral out of control so quickly? And could this disaster end her Hollywood career forever? Just a year ago, Rachel Zegler was living every young actress's dream, starring in Disney's highly anticipated live-action Snow White remake and positioned as Hollywood's next big star. Audiences and critics praised her breakout performance in Spielberg's West Side Story, setting her up for what many expected to be a stellar career. But in a startling turn of events, Rachel's fairy tale rise turned into a nightmare practically overnight. After Snow White flopped spectacularly at the box office, Rachel quickly went from red carpet darling to Hollywood pariah, facing intense backlash over controversial comments made during the film's promotion. Desperate to escape relentless criticism, she abruptly left Los Angeles for New York City, trading exclusive premieres and private chauffeurs for anonymous subway rides and crowded city sidewalks. Social media lit up with posts from shocked fans who couldn't believe they were seeing a Hollywood star riding local trains, alone and seemingly defeated. Images circulated rapidly, painting a stark contrast to the glamorous lifestyle Rachel once proudly displayed. Reports surfaced suggesting she was deeply affected by the harsh public rejection, with insiders claiming she was even seeking professional help to cope with the intense scrutiny. Her sudden retreat from public life raised alarming questions about her emotional state and the devastating impact of public ridicule on young stars. Rachel's unexpected downfall wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal, highlighting the brutal nature of fame in the digital age. But how exactly did one promising star's career implode so dramatically, leaving her to seek anonymity on the crowded trains of New York? Disney's Snow White remake wasn't just a minor flop, it was an absolute box office disaster, causing one of the fastest declines in cinema history. Opening weekend seemed concerning enough, but by the second weekend, the movie experienced an astonishing 66% drop in ticket sales, a clear indication that audiences were rapidly abandoning ship. Movie theaters nationwide scrambled, quickly pulling the film to free up space for more profitable titles, as audiences flocked to see blockbusters like Minecraft and Captain America: Brave New World. Images flooded social media, showing empty theaters where Snow White was playing, with one TikTok notably going viral for featuring a woman who discovered she was literally the only viewer present. This humiliating scenario repeated itself across hundreds of theaters, with screenings regularly selling fewer than 3 tickets per showing, a staggering embarrassment for Disney. Internationally, the film's fate was equally grim. In China, despite an aggressive marketing push plastering Snow White posters everywhere, from billboards to elevators, theaters stood virtually empty. Footage emerged showing large IMAX screenings with barely a handful of audience members present, including a widely shared clip where a Shanghai reporter humorously noted that he and his friend were among just 5 people attending an otherwise deserted screening. Rachel Zegler's personal involvement only amplified the disaster. In one cringeworthy moment, she appeared at a nearly empty theater herself, and a viral TikTok captured her looking visibly uncomfortable, sitting completely alone. The global numbers spoke volumes. Despite a massive $250 million budget, the film barely grossed $143 million worldwide, nowhere near breaking even, especially considering additional marketing costs. Disney insiders were horrified, initially estimating a $115 million loss, but as theaters kept dropping the film, losses soared closer to a devastating $145 million. Snow White wasn't merely unsuccessful. It quickly became one of Hollywood's biggest box office failures ever recorded. Rachel Zegler's off-screen behavior and controversial public statements didn't just affect Snow White's box office performance, they shattered her personal image and professional relationships as well. Even before the film's disastrous debut, rumors were circulating about Rachel's controlling attitude on set. Insiders described her as demanding, often clashing with filmmakers over creative decisions, particularly her portrayal of Snow White. Instead of respecting the beloved original storyline, Rachel pushed for dramatic changes, openly criticizing the 1937 animated classic during interviews. Her controversial comments included dismissing the original love story as weird and calling Snow White's prince a literal stalker, remarks that infuriated longtime Disney fans and disrespected her co-stars, notably Andrew Burnap, who'd dedicated significant effort to his role. The controversy only deepened once the film flopped. Reports emerged detailing heated behind-the-scenes confrontations, including a shocking incident involving her co-star Gal Gadot. According to insiders, Gadot directly confronted Rachel on set, blaming her openly for the film's box office collapse. Disney executives allegedly pressured Gadot to publicly defend Rachel, hoping to mitigate backlash, but Gadot pointedly refused, choosing instead to subtly criticize the project's lack of teamwork and collaboration during interviews. This distancing by a major star highlighted how severely Rachel had alienated her colleagues. Simultaneously, Rachel's frequent political statements during press tours, perceived by many as condescending and divisive, made studios extremely wary. Major production houses started labeling her as a high-risk talent, reluctant to cast her in upcoming projects due to fears she'd further provoke backlash. As damaging rumors continued swirling, insiders revealed Rachel was struggling emotionally, reportedly experiencing breakdowns and possibly seeking therapy. What started as a promising career quickly deteriorated into a cautionary tale, leaving Rachel increasingly isolated, her reputation tarnished, and her once bright Hollywood future alarmingly uncertain. The Snow White disaster didn't just devastate Rachel Zegler's career, it sent shockwaves through Disney's entire billion-dollar live-action remake strategy. For years, Disney confidently churned out blockbuster remakes, with movies like The Lion King and Aladdin generating over $1 billion each. However, Snow White's spectacular failure signaled a troubling shift, prompting executives to panic and reconsider their approach. Insiders revealed that Disney immediately halted development on Tangled, a project originally poised to become their most expensive live-action remake ever. The Snow White fiasco, driven by Rachel's controversial comments and radical storytelling changes, forced Disney to recognize how deeply they'd misunderstood audience expectations. CEO Bob Iger's awkward response during a recent interview, admitting he wasn't even sure what woke meant, further underscored Disney's growing confusion over their identity and market positioning. The financial consequences for Disney have been devastating. Initially, internal forecasts estimated Snow White's losses at around $115 million, but the actual numbers painted an even bleaker picture, with projected losses ballooning closer to $145 million. Industry analysts suggest Disney's aggressive push toward modernizing classic fairy tales alienated their core audiences, those who cherished nostalgia, romance, and timeless storytelling. With Rachel's polarizing portrayal and significant backlash from audiences, the company found itself trapped in a costly miscalculation. Now, with investors increasingly uneasy and fans openly criticizing the studio's direction, Disney faces tough questions about their future. Snow White wasn't just another failed remake. It may have triggered the unraveling of an entire cinematic empire. As the box office numbers tanked and backlash grew, Rachel Zegler found herself at the center of a rapidly spreading storm, both online and within the industry. Social media became a ruthless arena, relentlessly trolling her for the controversial remarks she made during press tours. Clips of Rachel mocking the original Snow White, calling the iconic romance weird and outdated, went viral, triggering widespread outrage from Disney's most loyal fans. Her dismissive attitude towards a beloved classic didn't just upset nostalgic viewers, it also alarmed studio executives who began viewing her as toxic to brand image. Insiders described Rachel as increasingly overwhelmed by the intense scrutiny, with reports emerging of emotional breakdowns behind closed doors. Allegedly, she even considered seeking therapy to cope with the mounting pressure, as every move she made came under brutal public scrutiny. Things only worsened when Rachel's own attempts at damage control spectacularly backfired. In one painfully humiliating incident, Rachel personally appeared at a nearly deserted Snow White screening, captured by a fan on TikTok, visibly uncomfortable and isolated. The viral footage intensified the ridicule, portraying her not as a sympathetic figure but as a symbol of arrogance and detachment from reality. Industry sources claim this incident marked a turning point, convincing major studios Rachel was a liability who could damage future projects simply by association. Her relationships with co-stars deteriorated further, as evidenced by Gal Gadot's subtle but telling statements to the press. Gadot suggested the film's disastrous reception was rooted in poor teamwork behind the scenes, implicitly pointing to Rachel's divisive behavior. Privately, tensions escalated to outright confrontations, with Gadot reportedly blaming Rachel directly for the box office failure during a heated exchange. Disney's alleged attempts to get Gadot to publicly support Rachel also failed. failed, with Godot outright refusing to risk her own carefully curated image for Rachel's sake. The situation became painfully clear. Rachel had burned critical bridges, both professionally and personally, isolating herself from colleagues and industry allies alike. Now, with a damaged reputation and dwindling support, Rachel Zegler faces a harsh reality: the possibility that Hollywood's once promising rising star could soon fade entirely. Disney CEO Bob Iger's public response only fueled further controversy, revealing deep uncertainty at the heart of the company's creative direction. In a candid but awkward interview, Iger admitted confusion over the term woke, highlighting Disney's struggle to balance social messages with pure entertainment. His hesitant acknowledgement that Disney's primary goal should be entertaining rather than politically influencing audiences exposed internal anxieties following Snow White's catastrophic performance. Despite attempting a reassuring tone, Iger's comments only reinforced public perception that Disney had lost touch with its core audience, unintentionally validating critics who argued the studio was prioritizing activism over storytelling. Behind closed doors, executives scrambled to contain the damage. Sources revealed Disney urgently paused production on their next big-budget remake, Tangled, which had been expected to surpass even Snow White's massive production costs. With losses from Snow White spiraling toward $145 million, continuing such a risky investment suddenly seemed reckless. Internally, debates raged about whether Disney's aggressive push toward modernizing classic fairy tales had reached its breaking point, finally alienating even the most dedicated fans. The situation worsened as reports surfaced about Rachel Zegler's polarizing influence. Insiders noted that Disney executives were particularly disturbed by Rachel's public dismissal of the original Snow White story, which seemed to mock the foundation of the Disney brand itself. Faced with growing fan frustration, uncertain leadership, and massive financial losses, Disney now confronts an uncomfortable truth. Snow White's failure may have exposed fundamental cracks threatening the future of their billion-dollar live-action remake strategy. The ripple effects from Rachel Zegler's Snow White disaster extend far beyond one film, shaking the very foundations of Disney's carefully cultivated image and content strategy. Analysts now speculate this colossal failure signals a broader shift in audience expectations, a powerful warning that even iconic brands can't ignore their core fan base without severe repercussions. Disney's successful live-action adaptations, such as The Lion King and Aladdin, thrived because they respected the spirit of the original classics. Snow White's stark deviation, pushed aggressively by Rachel's insistence on radical changes, left both new and longtime Disney fans confused and disillusioned. Instead of creating excitement, the film sparked anger and disinterest, resulting in near-empty theaters worldwide. Comparisons emerged rapidly, highlighting the stark contrast between Disney's empty theaters and films like Minecraft, which attracted massive crowds, even inspiring quirky audience behaviors like bringing live chickens to screenings. This humiliating juxtaposition amplified Disney's embarrassment, underscoring how dramatically they'd misread their audience. Industry experts argue that Snow White's failure illustrates a painful lesson. Modernizing beloved stories requires delicate handling and genuine respect for the original material, qualities entirely absent in this remake. Internally, Disney now faces uncomfortable discussions about their future direction. Executives are reportedly revisiting their entire remake strategy, considering whether it's sustainable in its current form. For Rachel, the consequences are even more severe. Her reputation is now synonymous with one of Hollywood's biggest recent failures, drastically limiting future career opportunities. This isn't merely a setback for one actress. It's a cautionary tale about ignoring the voices that matter most, the audiences who ultimately decide a film's success or failure. Rachel Zegler's Hollywood future now hangs precariously by a thread, as major studios increasingly see her as a risky liability rather than a promising talent. Once praised for her breakthrough performance in Spielberg's West Side Story, she's now infamous for her association with the catastrophic Snow White flop. Insiders have revealed studios are hesitant to cast Rachel in significant roles, fearing her unpredictability during promotional tours and her apparent tendency to create controversy. Casting directors reportedly worry that audiences won't separate her personal controversies from any new projects, potentially endangering future box office returns. Her situation contrasts sharply with other rising stars whose careers flourished by carefully avoiding divisive public commentary. Rachel's willingness to openly criticize Disney's beloved classic alienated traditional fans and branded her as someone willing to sabotage her own projects for personal beliefs. Industry veterans warn that such a reputation is nearly impossible to shake off, especially in Hollywood, where second chances are rare and image is everything. The brutal backlash online, combined with visible distancing by her peers, paints a bleak picture for Rachel's career prospects. Even her former supporters seem wary of associating their brands with her tarnished reputation. Hollywood insiders suggest Rachel will now face an uphill battle trying to reclaim trust and respect within the industry. Despite her obvious talent, overcoming this degree of professional isolation and skepticism will require extraordinary efforts, humility, and likely a prolonged hiatus from high-profile projects. Rachel Zegler's trajectory story illustrates a painful reality. In Hollywood, reputation often matters as much as, or more than, raw talent. The most devastating blow to Rachel Zegler's career may be the complete collapse of trust, both from within the industry and from the audiences she once hoped to inspire. Snow White was intended to be a landmark film, a continuation of Disney's golden legacy of modern reimaginings. Instead, it became a textbook example of how ignoring fan expectations and disrespecting source material can spark an industry-wide backlash. Rachel's interviews, where she casually dismissed the original storyline and criticized its central romance, turned what could have been a celebration into a battleground. Audiences didn't just reject the film, they felt insulted by it. For Disney, the damage goes beyond a financial disaster. It's a reputational crisis. Their most loyal fans now view the studio as out of touch and arrogant, pushing agendas over storytelling. For Rachel, the fallout is even more personal. She's no longer seen as a rising star, but as a symbol of everything that went wrong with the project. From over 200 theaters dropping the film to co-stars refusing to publicly support her, the message is clear. Hollywood doesn't forget this kind of failure easily. What began as a dream role for Rachel has now become a haunting reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in show business. Rachel Zegler's fall from Hollywood's rising star to industry outcast didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, public unraveling, accelerated by poor choices, unchecked ego, and a complete disconnect from audience sentiment. Snow White was never just a movie. It was a litmus test for how far studios could push reinvention before breaking trust. Rachel's decision to mock the very legacy that gave her a platform turned admiration into resentment. Disney bet big on modern messaging, only to be met with empty theaters, viral ridicule, and a staggering $145 million in losses. What's left is more than a box office bomb. It's a blueprint for what not to do in today's entertainment landscape. The real tragedy? Rachel had undeniable talent, but her inability to navigate fame with humility may have cost her everything. In an industry that thrives on perception, redemption is rare, and trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore. Whether Rachel disappears quietly or mounts a comeback depends not on another flashy role, but on her willingness to listen, evolve, and respect the very audience she once alienated. Can Rachel Zegler recover from this Hollywood disaster? Or is this the end of her fairy tale? Let us know in the comments, and if you found this story eye-opening, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more uncensored breakdowns of Hollywood's biggest flops and fallouts.